My brother died today. It was our mother who found him. After years of fighting depression, of heartbreaks, self-doubt, and betrayal by loved ones, he finally had enough. It took one bullet, one tiny piece of metal to end a lifetime's worth of misery. I walked into the house hearing the agonizing screams of our mother. I ran up the stairs and into his room. I saw her holding her baby, begging him to breathe. The blood, my God, the blood, it was everywhere. It was splattered on the wall behind her. It almost looked beautiful, all dark red on an old and beaten down white wall like an unfinished painting. His blood was all over our mother. She cradled his lifeless body, screaming over and over, "Breathe, please breathe." It didn't take long for the ambulance and the cops to arrive. They had to pry our mother's hands off him. She refused to let him go, as if she held tightly enough she could stop his soul from leaving. I talked to the cops for hours. My mother was taken to the hospital suffering from shock. They quickly ruled out homicide, especially since it was only his prints on the gun. I was oddly cold to the whole situation. He was my brother and I loved him. But in the moment I didn't feel anything. A form of shock, or maybe guilt. I returned back home. I decided to sleep on our couch in the living room on the first floor. I would have to pass by his room to get to mine, and I wasn't ready for that. I tried to go to sleep, however, after a long day of feeling nothing, an emotion finally hit me. It wasn't sorrow or anger. It was fear. I was home alone, and yet upstairs, in his room, I could hear footsteps pacing back and forth. I awoke early that morning to loud knocking on my door. Somehow I had fallen asleep even through the fear. I ignored the knocking and carefully listened for any noise upstairs. Nothing. I blocked the footsteps from last night from my mind. A nightmare. I thought, after all, it was a long and traumatic day. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Shit. I muttered under my breath. It was her. My brother's girlfriend. Well, ex-girlfriend. I really didn't want to deal with this. I reluctantly opened the door. She just stared at me with tears in her eyes. I gave her that look, that "yes, it's true" look. She burst into tears. I don't know if it was seeing her cry, but I finally cried too. We held each other and cried in the doorway for what felt like ages. After some time she stopped and looked at me with tears in her eyes still. I motioned for her to come inside. We walked over to the couch and sat down in silence, not looking at each other, both of us preoccupied with our own thoughts. Then she looked at me and said it. I knew it was coming. The same thought was going through my head all day. "You know this is our fault,